So when this dialogue comes out, it creates havoc, because Galileo is no longer arguing merely hypothetically. The argument about the tides and how the movement of the Earth going around the Sun and its daily rotations produce the tidal movement. Now, Galileo's argument was wrong, but the type of argument it was no longer hypothetical. It was talking about how certain effects could be produced. The Copernican model itself could be understood as simply a change of reference frame from Earth-centered to Sun-centered. And you just transform all the equations into a different reference frame, but it doesn't commit you to some physical effects being produced by physical causes. It's just the geometry has changed. But the tidal argument is about how certain effects, the tides, get produced by the actual movement of the Earth. That's no longer a hypothetical argument. And the other problem is, it made the Pope look like a fool by putting this argument I mentioned in the mouth of Simplicio. And so what came to light was, that's what creates a problem. What the second trial of Galileo, as it's called, was really, though, about had Galileo been faithful to the injunctions from the Inquisition and Pope Urban's direction in writing his book. And he was judged not to have done that. He was judged to have exceeded, gone beyond those restrictions. And Pope Urban was really upset when this unsigned document was discovered from 1616, which they hadn't realised was in the folder. Galileo didn't know about it. Galileo produced out of his pocket the letter that no one else knew about from Bellarmine. He didn't help himself by saying, I'm sure, under the stress of the Inquisition, that of course he didn't really mean to defend the Copernican view. This didn't help him in that context. And so he was asked to capitulate. And so I tell all of that, I should have probably done it the other way, but I tell all that just as a little indication of the many complexities in this story. But here's my point, and for which the Catholic Church is particularly criticised. And Richard Griffiths, in 1994, who was the lead actor in Brecht's play Galileo, said publicly after being Galileo in all the performances that, and here's the quote, that the Catholic Church, by suppressing Galileo, denied the truth that was there for all to see. Now, being an Anglican, I can cope with politics. Messy, sometimes messy politics. But the deeper charge that the atheists want to make against Catholicism and Christianity is that it was intellectually duplicitous, it was intellectually cowardly, that it couldn't cope with the truth that was there for all to see. Now, that's wrong. And the reason it is wrong is that all of Galileo's observations, his telescopic observations, certainly killed off the Ptolemaic worldview, that Earth-centered view. It certainly did that. But all of those observations were absolutely accepted by Pope Urban and absolutely accepted and reproduced by all the Jesuit astronomers in Rome. But all of the observations could be accommodated within another whole view of the thing, which was promoted by the Dutch astronomer Tycho Brahe, which was that the Earth was at the centre, the Sun with all the moon and all the other planets going around the Sun, while the Sun went around the Earth. So all the telescopic observations underdetermine, as they say in the trade, underdetermine which theory you should choose. And that the tides argument is necessary to try and break the deadlock. but the tides argument was not a good physical argument. And so the church is, I think, it has to wear some well, as my friend Neil says, as an atheist, it's a PR disaster for the Catholic Church and for the rest of Christianity, right? Because we all, in many ways, all now stand together. The church was not intellectually weak there. In fact, on the intellectual side of the matter, I believe the church got the core right. In how Galileo was got treated is another question. So there's a rave about the Galileo affair. Now, do I have time in this opening 30 minutes to do something else, or should I stop here? Okay. Well, I'll just open this up, but then not go into it because time is what it is. And I hope I'm not seeing some eyes glazing over there. Wine, good food, warm atmosphere. Yes. But so on the question of God and evolution, that's the one we saw there. Dawkins thinks that basically you can't line them up. Yes, everybody from the Pope down who believes in God and evolution holds them together, but not with integrity, is really what Dawkins says. And here's one of the things that he argues. He says, well, let me just notice with you that if you're going to talk about God and the natural sciences, whichever way you run the conversation, you need some idea of God. Right? Can't do without it. Dawkins meets this requirement because he tells us in the God Delusion what is the idea of God that he doesn't believe in. And the idea of God that he doesn't believe in is God is the intelligent, supernatural creator and designer of the universe. Right? And so this is how his argument goes. He says, or part of his argument, he says, look, his alternative view to that is that anything that is complex enough to do any kind of designing can only come into existence by evolving slowly up what he calls Mount Improbable, the slow steps of natural selection that produce more and more complex things, right? Until, like human beings, but God, if God designed everything, well, God must be so incredibly complex, and God must have only could have got that way by evolving up Mount Improbable. That's his evolutionary view of things. And now what he's saying is this. Look, but suppose the intelligent design people are right. Suppose they find something, something that's irreducibly complex, that you can't explain via a climb up Mount Improbable. He said that will ruin Darwinism. That's it. And he quotes Darwin to the same effect. Well, Darwin certainly said, if I found just one thing that could not be explained by my theory, then my theory is dead in the water, or words to that effect. But now Dawkins goes on and says, but wait a minute. If you do find something like this, and it's killed off the theory of evolution, no matter, it's already killed off God. Because God would have to evolve. Right? Now, the argument is a bit funny, but it's basically, here's evolution, and here's how I think about how complex things come into existence. And even if you say we find something that's irreducibly complex, nevertheless, God would still have to have evolved, so it's all right. You can actually go and read this, it's not difficult to find, it's in chapter 4, and the problem is this. Even though you find, if you did find, for the sake of the argument, something that was irreducibly complex, and that shattered Darwinism and his view of things, nevertheless, suddenly, Darwinism pops up over here when to say, oh no, but God must still have actually evolved up Mount Improbable. This is actually having your cake and eating it too.